I still remember the weight of that morning, how it pressed into my chest like the heel of a boot. My name is Alawan Calder, though most people call me Ren. I'd always wrapped myself in the small comforts of routine, the soft click of my keys as I typed out reports by dawn's light, the silent hum of my favorite playlist in my headphones, the predictable stretch of tram tracks that carried me through Edinburgh's misty streets. But that morning, everything changed. I'd spent months scouring second-hand shops and estate sales for something unusual yet discreet, something that felt uniquely mine. When I found the ring, a slender band of rose gold, etched with delicate Celtic knots and adorned with a tiny, pale moonstone, I knew. It was perfect in its imperfection. It hadn't cost a fortune, just a few £100, but it carried centuries of stories within its curves. When I slid it onto my finger, it felt as though I'd claimed a fragment of history for myself. The first to see it was my mother. Her eyes widened, not in delight but in barely veiled consternation. "Oh, it's sweet," she said, turning away to refill her teacup as though she'd been given a trinket instead of a promise. My father, leaning against the kitchen counter, raised an eyebrow. "That'll do then," he asked, in the kind of tone that suggested he'd expected something much grander. Their laughter, unkind and clipped, ricocheted around the room. Not the warm, indulgent laughter I remembered from my childhood, but the sharp kind one uses to mask disappointment. My cheeks burned as I met my fiance's eyes, Alex, whose gentle reassurance behind mine was the only cushion between my heart and the floor. "Your parents are proud of you, Ren," he whispered, pressing a kiss to my temple. His hand, warm and steady, enveloped mine. But pride, I realized, didn't come with expectations so rigid that love could be measured by carats or clarity. I left their flat in a whirl of cool March air and bitter words, clutching my coat around me like armor as I huddled onto the tram. Images of fancy showrooms and glittering showcases flickered through my mind, settings where mother and father had always imagined such an announcement taking place, with reporters and champagne and discounts of prestige. I, on the other hand, had envisioned solitude and sincerity, a quiet moment shared between two people who understood value beyond price tags. When I arrived at the jeweler's that afternoon, I found him hunched over his bench beneath the muted glow of an amber lamp. Mr. Carmichael was a legend in the city. His work, sought by those who believed jewelry was more than jewelry, it was art. He beeped me in, greeted me by name, and ran his fingers over the ring's twisting lines as though he were reading a braille chart of memories. "It's lovely," he murmured, but his eyes held something deeper respect. "May I ask what it cost?" £200, I replied, the admission tasting of defiance. He paused, then smiled, a genuine curve that banished the cobwebs from his lined face. "Madam, the worth of this ring cannot be measured in pounds. It's the moonstone, the way it catches the light, like a sliver of hopes and dreams. If you ever decide to part with it, you must promise me something." My heart fluttered with apprehension. "Anything." "Let me auction it," he said, eyes shining. "Let us show the world that beauty and value lie in intention and story, not price tags. I live stream all my sales on Tuesdays. Bring it back." That night, dinner with Alex was bathed in soft lamplight and the crackle of our tiny gas stove. We cooked pasta and drank wine from chipped glasses. With each swirl of sauce across my tongue, with each sip, joy unfurled like smoke around us. I told him about Mr. Carmichael's plan, expecting caution, but he only chuckled. "You'll show them," he said, tapping my hand. "We'll show all of them." And so I did. The next Tuesday, I returned to the dusty shop and left my ring in Mr. Carmichael's care. I tried not to dwell on my parents' smirks or the hollow silence that had followed their laughter. But a seed of doubt had settled in my chest. What if the world agreed with them? What if the ring's story was too quiet to be heard beyond their narrow definitions of worth? On the day of the auction, I sat in my flat, my phone buzzing with Notifications as the live stream began. The screen glowed. Mr. Carmichael, impeccably dressed, held the ring aloft like an offering to the night sky. Behind him, dozens of watchers tuned in from around the world. "Welcome," he said, voice resonant with pride. "Tonight, we honor a piece of art that whispers rather than shouts. A ring born of modest means, yet limitless in spirit. I present to you the Calder Moonstone." Heart pounding, I watched as the first bid appeared. £500. And then, pound 1,000. And then ... silence. The screen stuttered for a moment, and I leaned forward, breath suspended. Just as I thought I might be too late, a new notification flashed, a bid of £20,000. I stared at the number, my pulse thundering, as the auctioneer's gavel hovered in midair. And then ... before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. And then ... the gavel fell with a thunderous crack that echoed in my ears, yet the world had gone silent around me. £20,000. I stared at the screen, my breath caught somewhere between disbelief and elation. A single bid from a stranger whose name I could only guess, anonymous bidder number 47, had shattered every expectation. My mind spun back to that morning, to my parents' laughter. It felt as though the air had shifted. Pride and vindication flowed through me like molten fire. Alex, beside me, let out a low whistle. His eyes sparkled with a mixture of awe and something else, relief, perhaps. "You did it," he whispered. "We did it," I corrected, because this triumph belonged to both of us, and to every quiet hope I'd ever nurtured. But before the screen faded and the auction closed, Mr. Carmichael looked directly at the camera, as though he knew I was watching. With my heart in my throat, "To NB number 47, he said, his voice hushed with reverence, "thank you for valuing the story behind the stone." He let the words hang, a benediction that warmed me through and through. That night, we celebrated in our tiny flat until the embers of dawn glowed at the edges of the sky. Alex fell asleep curled around me, his breath steady, and I whispered into the darkness, "Thank you." For him, for every person known or unknown, believed in more than the sparkle of glass and metal. But triumph is a wily companion. It does not allow complacence. 2 days later, an envelope arrived with the auction house's seal. Inside, the transfer agreed, £20,000 minus fees. As I held the letter, the ink smudged slightly under my trembling fingers. I realized something profoundly unsettling. This amount far beyond the cost of a life-changing honeymoon felt like a promise of battles yet to come, because when people pay attention, they begin to ask questions. My sister Lucinda had always stood on the sidelines, her opinions whispered, like wind in the trees. But now, emboldened by gossip spilled over champagne glasses at family gatherings, she called. "Mum and Dad are furious," she hissed confidentially. "They think you're mad. They've taken the car out of your name. They say you're ungrateful." I closed my eyes, disbelieving. Lucinda continued, oblivious to my silence. "They're worried about inheritance. You know how Dad is." Inheritance. A word heavy with entanglements, expectations, and the kind of privilege I'd spent my life carving away from. My parents had never intended to hand me anything of value, not truly. Everything I'd earned on my own. That afternoon, I stood outside their Georgian townhouse, the place of my childhood, and felt the first real tremor of fear. I rang the bell, but no one answered. The windows were shuttered. Inside, they were likely whispering about my temerity, my supposed betrayal. I walked away, shoulders stiff, torn between the longing for reconciliation and the recognition that reconciliation might demand I sacrifice something I could not give. Alex met me at the corner cafe where we'd had our first date. His presence grounded me as always, but I could see the worry in his eyes. "We'll face them together," he said, pulling me into a hug. I nodded against his chest, but my heart was heavy with questions I could not yet voice. Should I fight for approval that came with conditions? Or should I embrace this new identity that felt more like my own than anything I'd ever claimed? That evening, as rain pattered against our windows, I drafted an email to Mr. Carmichael. I asked him to pause the sale of the ring until I could decide what to do with the money and with the legacy it represented. I hit send, and a weight lifted from my shoulders even as uncertainty settled in its place. Then, out of the blue, my phone buzzed with a message that made my blood run cold. Meet me, tomorrow, noon, the Edinburgh Vaults. The sender's number was blocked. No signature. No context. Just a demand. I showed Alex. His face paled. I don't like this, he said. Neither do I admitted. But despite the chill in my veins, my pulse throbbed with a curious thrill. Something about this clandestine summons felt like the next door in a maze I was destined to open. The next morning, I woke before dawn, the heaviness of sleep clinging to me like dew. I slipped the engagement ring back onto my finger. It felt less like a token now and more like a talisman. Every knot in the metal whispered courage into my palm. At noon, I stood at the mouth of the Edinburgh Vaults, heart hammering against the barrier of my ribs. The air inside smelled of damp stone and secrets. I followed the corridor until a lone figure emerged from the shadows, and then I saw her. She was older, dressed in a tailored coat that hinted at wealth she'd earned, not inherited. Her eyes ice blue, unflinching, locked onto mine. "Alawan Calder," she said, her voice a smooth blend of warmth and authority. "I've been waiting for you." I swallowed. "Who are you?" She smiled, a slow and knowing curve. "Someone who can show you what your moonstone ring really holds. But first, you must trust me." My breath caught, and as the stone at my finger pressed against my skin, I realized that trust would be the hardest auction of all, because some treasures cost far more than money. We stepped through, and the world went black. I fought to breathe as the chill of unconsciousness released its grip. My eyelids fluttered like hesitant wings before settling on the rough-hewn ceiling of a cavern lit by flickering torches. My heart pounded, the rhythm of my blood like a drum in my ears. I shifted, and Alex's hand found mine warm, steady, reminding me I was not alone. "Ren?" he rasped, voice raw with worry. I swallowed, tasting the cold dampness in my mouth. "I'm here," I whispered, though my voice echoed unnaturally in the vaulted chamber. Our guide, the woman from the vault, stood near a circle of stones carved with the same intricate knotwork as my moonstone ring. Shadows danced across her face, revealing the sharp lines of someone who had faced dangers far greater than ours. "It's time," she said, her tone both gentle and commanding. She gestured to the ring on my finger, now glowing faintly with an ethereal blue light. I rose unsteadily to my feet, every muscle protesting. The cavern stretched into darkness beyond the torchlight, a maw of ancient stone. At its center, an altar, a slab of granite etched with an enormous tree whose branches and roots intertwined in endless loops. The silver key she had given me lay atop the altar, beside a shallow depression shaped like the ring itself. "This is the altar of Ashenvale," she explained. "Place the ring here under the full moon's gaze, and the pact will awaken." I glanced upward. Though I could not see the sky, I felt the moon's pull in my blood, the waxing orb just days from fullness, its power already stirring. Alex squeezed my hand. "We'll do it together," he promised. I nodded, stepping forward. Every step felt like wading through water. My mind whirled with questions. What happened if the pact failed? What forces lay dormant, waiting to rise? But with Alex's eyes on me, filled with unwavering faith, I knew I could face whatever came. At the edge of the altar, I knelt and laid the ring in the carved depression. The metal hummed against the stone, a vibration that traveled through my palm and into my heart. The woman raised her arms, chanting in a language I could not recognize. a lilting rhythmic incantation that echoed off the chamber walls. "Alex!" And I watched, mesmerized, as the knotwork on the altar glowed first a soft silver, then brightened into pulsating light. Suddenly, the ground trembled. Dust cascaded from the ceiling, and a low rumble resonated beneath our feet. Alex grabbed my shoulder, his eyes wide. "A boundary has been broken," the woman intoned. "The pact stirs. Darkness will test your bond. Stand firm." A gust of wind rose from the altar, swirling around us like a spectral hurricane. The torch flames bent and danced, casting frantic shadows. I felt the ring pulse again, stronger now, as though it recognized its moment of destiny. And then, from the darkness beyond the torchlight, shapes began to emerge. First, a figure draped in tattered robes, its face hidden beneath a hood. Then, another and another, 6 in total, bearing staves topped with shards of moonstone. Their movements were silent, deliberate, their intent inscrutable. My breath hitched. The woman stepped forward, meeting their procession with a nod of respect. "Sisters of the Moon," she greeted. "The time has come." The robed figures lowered their staves in unison, reverence and wariness intertwined in their stance. They surrounded the altar, their voices joining in the chant, a haunting harmony that resonated in my bones. One of them, a tall woman whose eyes glowed like molten silver, addressed me. "Child of Calder, bearer of the final oath crystal, do you accept the burden of our pact? To defend the balance between light and shadow, to claim the sight given by the moonstone." Her voice was at once melodic and edged with steel. My heart thundered. This was the moment of truth, the point of no return. Every instinct screamed to run, to flee the weight of ancient duties. But I saw Alex's hand on my back, a lifeline to the world I loved. "I accept," I said, voice trembling but resolute. The circle of robed figures closed inward, their staffs lowered until the moonstone shards touched the edge of the rings. Depression. A cascade of silver light poured from the stones, pooling around the ring until the altar itself seemed to glow with living moonlight. Then, as one, they lowered their heads, and the light surged upward in a column that pierced the ceiling, flooding the cavern with brilliance. I squeezed Alex's hand, feeling the power surge through me, a warmth that chased away the cold, a clarity that cut through doubt. But then, a sudden crack tore through the chamber. The altar's glow flickered, and the column of light wavered. Like a flame in a gale, shouts echoed from the entrance. Heavy footsteps thundered. Something or someone had forced its way into the sanctum. The woman's eyes snapped open in alarm. "Protect the bearer," she cried. Alex held me close, his own fear shining in his eyes. The robed figures formed a protective barrier around us, staffs raised. The moonlight column dimmed, dying. I realized with a start that the ring had slipped from its depression. It lay on the altar, its glow reduced to a faint pulse. A voice, deep and resonant, echoed through the chamber. "You dare invoke the ancient pact?" It thundered. From the shadows at the far end, a figure emerged, a man cloaked in midnight, his eyes 2 silver slits that glinted with malice. "My power was promised this ring," he continued, stepping forward. "We turn it or witness the pact's end." My blood ran cold. The air around him seemed to twist and darken. The robed sisters lifted their staves defensively, flickers of defensive light dancing around them. I felt the ring's hum grow weak. Without it, the pact would unravel, and darkness would claim the night. I glanced up at Alex. "We can't let him take it," I said, voice fierce. He nodded, stepping in front of me. "I won't let you face this alone," the sisters chanted, weaving protective wards in the moonlight. The man sneered, raising his hands as tendrils of shadow coalesced around him. I clenched my fists, drawing on the warmth of the moonstone in my palm. With a roar, I lunged for the ring, thoughts seized by a single truth. Some treasures cost far more than money. As my fingers closed around the cool metal, The pact awakened in full. A surge of power ripped through the chamber, shattering the darkness like glass. Light exploded outward, and the shadow-wrapped man screamed as the radiance seared him away. Then, in the deafening silence that followed, the altar's glow solidified into a beacon of silver light that bathed us all. And as I stood there, breathless and trembling with newfound power, a whisper curled through my mind. The true test begins at dawn, to be continued. Because some treasures cost far more than money, the woman's eyes bore into mine, a challenge and an invitation all at once. The vaulted corridors felt impossibly narrow, the damp stone walls pressing in with an urgency I'd never known. She held out a slender envelope, its cream color stark against the darker tones of the Edinburgh vaults. "Ilawan," she said, her voice low and steady. "Inside this envelope is proof that your ring is no mere trinket. It is part of a lineage, one that threads through centuries of secrets, alliances, and betrayals." My hand shook as I reached for the envelope. The leather pouch at my waist, usually so comforting, suddenly felt like the weight of the entire world. I glanced at Alex, who had followed me here in silence, his hand warm against my back. His presence was the only thing that tethered me to the mundane world I'd built for myself. I tore the seal and slipped out a brittle parchment. Ink, faded but still legible. The script danced across the page in elaborate flourishes, recounting a pact formed in medieval Scotland between a clan of healers and a coven of soothsayers. The moonstone, it claimed, was an oath token forged under a blood moon to bind the two houses in mutual protection. Legend held that whoever wore the stone could glimpse truths hidden from ordinary sight, but only if her heart was unclouded by greed. My breath caught. A power beyond the material? It sounded like folklore, but the careful precision of the document, its official seals, the crest that matched the knotwork on my ring left no room for doubt. "What is this?" I whispered, voice barely more than a breath. The woman, still shadowed, nodded. "The Pact of Ashenvale. Your ring is the final oath crystal. It chose you, Ilawan, and now it calls you to fulfill the covenant it was created for." My mind reeled. All my life, I'd chased after stability, a steady job, a loving partner, respect. Yet here I stood, clutching a relic of ancestral magic that demanded something far greater. I remembered my parents' laughter, the sting of their words, how small they'd made me feel when all I'd wanted was to honor our past. Looked up at the stranger, her eyes no longer intimidating but expectant. "What do I have to do?" I asked, already knowing that my answer would change everything. She smiled, a small, sad curve. "First, you must journey to Ashenvale, the old woods near Loch Torridon, before dawn on the next full moon. There, you will place the ring upon the altar of the ancients. And then, you will learn what it truly means to bear its power." Even as the words left her lips, doubt gnawed at me. The full moon was only days away. Could I leave everything I knew behind, my job, my family, Alex, to chase a legend whispered by candlelight? My pulse thundered. The ring pulsed against my finger, as though urging me onward. I glanced at Alex. His eyes, calm and fierce, met mine. "We'll go," he said. I wanted to believe I could say no, but the moonstone's gentle warmth seemed to seep into my bones, anchoring me to a destiny far greater than my fears. The woman extended her arm and, from the folds of her coat, produced a small, ornate key, silver, intricately carved. "This will open the hall beneath the Ashenvale altar," she explained. "But be warned, once you cross that threshold, there is no turning back." The words echoed through me. I swallowed, steeling myself for the path ahead. "When do we leave?" Before she could answer, a distant rumble shook the vaults. Dust fell from the ceiling. The lights flickered. A sound like the scrape of metal on stone reverberated down the corridor. She stiffened. "We're not alone." Alex grabbed my hand. My heart pounded as I followed him and the woman through a side passage. I'd never noticed before a corridor carved with symbols that mirrored. The ring's knotwork. The walls seemed to pulse, alive with secrets begging to be uncovered. Behind us, footsteps multiplied, echoing in the darkness. We quickened our pace, breath caught between fear and exhilaration. At the far end, an iron door marked with the Eschenvale. Crest stood waiting. The key trembled in my hand before sliding into the lock with a soft click. As the door swung open, a blast of cold air rushed out, carrying with it the scent of pine and something darker, ancient magic, restless and watchful. Stepped through, and the world went black. The true test begins at dawn. The whisper echoed in my mind long after the chamber fell silent. I stood amidst the ruins of shadow and light, the moonstone ring glowing in my palm. The power within it had unfurled like a banner bright, undeniable and ancient. My pulse raced. Around me, the robed sisters lowered their staves, reverent silence falling like a heavy shroud. The woman, our guide, approached slowly, her eyes filled with something like awe. "You've awakened the pact fully," she said, voice trembling. "At the edges, few have ever done so without training." "I didn't have a choice," I replied, still dazed. "He would have taken it," she nodded gravely. "Yes, that was Kaelwyn, the Oathbreaker. A former guardian who felt aggrieved and twisted the old magics for his own gain. His presence here means the seal between realms is weakening." Alex stepped to my side, his eyes wary. "So what happens now?" The woman looked to the altar, then back at me. "Now we train you. Dawn is only hours away. And when it comes, the realms will align. You must be ready." A sudden weight settled on my shoulders. I looked down at the ring, the humble piece my parents had ridiculed, and saw it now for what it was. Not just an heirloom, but a key, a catalyst. A call to war. We left the sanctum and emerged through a tunnel that opened into the pine-draped forests of Eschenvale. Above us, the night sky was bruised with stars, the moon high and sharp-edged. The air smelled of moss and magic. A small camp had been prepared near the tree-lined tents, a fire pit, and an arrangement of stone circles that mirrored the altar's markings. The sisters moved with silent efficiency, preparing charms, grinding herbs, drawing wards. One of them, the tall woman with molten silver eyes, stepped forward. "I am Celes," she said. "Tonight you'll begin your trials. They will test your spirit, your heart, your bond." She glanced at Alex with a look of quiet calculation. "Both of you." Alex's brow furrowed. "Me? The ring doesn't work alone," Celes replied. "Its power is amplified and sometimes tempered by the bond of those closest to the bearer. You're her anchor." He reached for my hand without hesitation. "Then let's do it," Celes gestured to the stone circles. "The trials begin now." We entered the first circle. The moment my foot crossed its edge, the forest vanished. I stood on a cliff overlooking a raging sea, the wind biting through my cloak, alone. "Alawen," a voice whispered my father's. I turned. He stood beside me, younger than I remembered, his face lined not with age but disappointment. "Gave you everything," he said, "and you threw it away for a stone." I knew this was a trial, an illusion. But the sting of his words landed with a cruel kind of truth. "I gave myself everything," I replied. "You only ever offered what you could control." He sneered, then faded with the wind. The trial shifted. This time I stood in a lavish ballroom. My mother danced across the floor in a gown of gold, surrounded by admirers. She saw me and stopped, her face twisting in disdain. "You could have been one of us," she said. "Why settle for so little?" I stepped forward, because I found love without permission, purpose without inheritance. That's more than you ever gave me. She turned away, vanishing in a flurry of silk. Then came silence. A mirror appeared in the center of the ballroom. I stepped toward it and saw a version of myself, cloaked in jewels, smug and empty. This is who you could become, the reflection. Whispered, powerful, worshipped, alone. I hesitated. Not if I stay true, the reflection cracked. The illusion fell away. I collapsed in the forest again, breath shallow. Celis knelt beside me, her silver eyes softening. You've passed the first, she said. But the next will test your bond. I looked for Alex and found him across the fire, breathing hard, clutching at his chest. I ran to him. What happened? I asked. He looked up, haunted. I saw you, walking away, choosing power over us. My chest ached. I would never. I know, but it felt so real. Celis approached us both. The final trial of the night is faced together. Step into the second circle. We obeyed. Light flared, and we were back at our flat, but something was wrong. Time was frozen. The television flickered static. The windows had no glass. And our engagement photo sat on the mantel, distorted, the moonstone ring glowing red instead of blue. A version of me stood in the kitchen, hard-eyed, cold, draped in dark robes. She sneered at Alex. You'll only hold her back, she said. She could command kingdoms. You offer nothing. He recoiled, and then she turned to me. Choose, she demanded, him or destiny. I stepped forward, heart thundering. Alex's eyes begged me not to leave, but also not to lie. I raised my hand. The ring pulsed. I choose the destiny where he walks beside me, not behind, not beneath, beside. The imposter screamed. Light erupted. When it faded, we stood alone. Holding hands, Celis stepped into the ring. You've passed, she said. Few do. I sagged against Alex, who held me tightly. What now? She pointed to the eastern sky. The first blush of dawn colored the horizon. Now, she said, you protect the world. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now back to the story. And from the woods beyond the firelight, a pair of silver eyes watched us, waiting, watching, to be continued. The raven's cry had barely faded when I felt it, a tremor beneath my feet, as if the city itself was shifting. Edinburgh's ancient wards, reactivated by the moonstone's light, pulsed softly, but beyond their glow, darkness gathered like storm clouds on the horizon. I stood in the courtyard of the new town sanctuary, the ring warm against my chest. Alex was by my side, his gaze scanning the surrounding buildings. The church bells tolled midnight, their peals resonant and mournful. Kelwyn won't let this rest. I murmured. Sael stepped forward, her silver hair catching the faint torchlight. His exile was but a reprieve, she said. Now he seeks vengeance to unravel the pact completely. She unfolded a parchment, an old city map crisscrossed with runes and annotations. He's targeting the 5 nexus sites within the city, points of ley line convergence where the barrier between realms is thinnest. I traced the map with my finger. Nexus sites. The Castle Undercroft, St. Giles Crypt, the Greyfriars Kirkyard, the vaults beneath Mary King's Close, and Holyrood Abbey. Alex grimaced. He can strike at any of them. We need to move fast. The sisters divided into teams. Celis would guard the castle. 2 others took St. Giles and Greyfriars. Alex and I were tasked with infiltrating the vaults beneath Mary King's Close to reinforce the ward there. It was a test of stealth and strategy, an assignment befitting the ring's bearer and her anchor. As we prepared to depart, Celis placed a hand on my shoulder. Remember, the moonstone's power is strongest when guided by the heart. Trust in yourself, Elawyn. I nodded, sliding the ring back onto my finger. Its knotwork glowed faintly, as if acknowledging its purpose once more. We slipped into the night, winding through narrow closes and under stone archways. The city's nocturnal rhythm pulsed around us, drunken laughter spilling from taverns, the distant clang of smiths' hammers, and the soft pad of our boots on cobblestones. At Mary King's Close, the entrance yawned like a black mouth. We ducked inside, torches out. navigating the labyrinth of abandoned shops and cramped passageways that twisted beneath the old town. Every shadow seemed alive whispers at the edge of hearing. Finally, we reached a sealed iron door emblazoned with a crest I recognized from the Pact's manuscripts. I raised the silver key, its metal cool and familiar, and unlocked the warded lock. With a groan, the door opened onto a vaulted chamber lit by phosphorescent moss. The air here hummed with ancient energy. At the center, a circular stone dais similar to the one at Edinburgh Castle lay dormant, its glyphs dark. I approached, heart pounding, and laid my hand on the cold surface. The ring responded, its glow filling the glyphs with silver light. Alex watched, tense. "It's recharging," he said. I closed my eyes, focusing on the warmth of his presence and the steady pulse of the ring. The glyphs flared, and a light breeze stirred the moss overhead. The barrier here was reinforced. But then, a distant clang steel on stone echoed from the entrance. Alex gripped my arm. "They're here." I drew the ring as a beacon. From the shadows emerged 3 Oathbreakers, their eyes black pits of malice. They raised their corrupted moonstone staves, shadows coiling around them. Without hesitation, I raised my palm. A wave of light burst forth, clashing with their darkness. The chamber lit like dawn breaking beneath the earth. They staggered, but one lunged forward, his staff crackling with shadow fire. The beam struck the glyphs, and a fissure raced along the dais's edge. "No!" I cried, stepping forward to brace the dais. Alex stood beside me, his own warmth bolstering the light. The Oathbreaker advanced again, and I realized only a direct strike could restore balance. I took a breath and lunged, placing the ring at the fissure's center. Light surged through my veins, through the ring, healing the break. The Oathbreaker fell back, his staff shattering. The other 2 fled into the darkness. I staggered, the afterimage of brilliance ringing in my vision. Alex caught me, concern etched on his face. "We did it," he said softly. I nodded, though fatigue weighed heavy. 1 down, 4 to go. We retreated above ground as the first light of dawn brushed the horizon. Edinburgh slept on, unaware of the war waging beneath its streets. But I knew Kaelwyn's forces would next target St. Giles Crypt, where the souls of the departed lingered. Alex slipped his hand into mine. "Ready for the next fight?" I shifted the ring on my finger, determination blazing in my chest. "Always." And as the city awoke, I felt the Pact's promise echo through every stone and spine, a vow to protect, no matter the cost, to be continued. Dawn broke over Ashenvale with a hush, as though the world itself held its breath. Silver light filtered through towering pines, painting the forest floor in pale stripes. I stood at the edge of the clearing, the moonstone ring cold against my palm, its glow faded but still present, a quiet heartbeat against my skin. Alex stood beside me, his eyes heavy with exhaustion but alight with purpose. He brushed a stray lock of hair from my face, his touch grounding me in the reality beyond the trials. Though our bond had been tested, it had emerged unbroken, a living testament to the choice I had declared at the altar. Celes emerged from the shadows, the other sisters trailing behind her like silent sentinels. "You have passed the night's challenges," she announced, voice soft but resonant. "But our work is far from over. Kaelwyn's forces will not rest. They will seek to reclaim the ring, to break the pact. We must return to Edinburgh before the next moonrise." I nodded, determination coiling in my chest. The trials had shown me what mattered most: love, honor, truth. Yet the echoes of the dark confrontation in the chamber still haunted me, the taste of fear, the shadow of Kaelwyn's malice. Our journey back began with a silent procession through the ancient woods. The sisters led us along hidden paths known only to those bound by the pact, their lanterns casting frosted halos in the mist. At times I caught glimpses of movement at the edges of vision, shifting shapes that melted away when I turned to look. Wolves, spirits, More of Kelwin's minions? I could not tell. By midday, we reached the outskirts of Edinburgh. The city lay shimmering under a clear sky, oblivious to the ancient war stirring beneath its streets. I inhaled deeply, tasting the tang of sea salt carried on the breeze from the Firth of Forth. Home, but not the same home I had left days before. Sally's guided me to a discreet townhouse in the new town, its facade unassuming among Georgian squares. Within, a hidden chamber awaited, a place where the Pax Guardians gathered to share knowledge and prepare defenses. Bookshelves lined with dusty tomes towered above a central table strewn with maps, charts, and strange artifacts. I must meet with the council, Sally said, moving to a high-backed chair. The sisters took places around the table, and Alex and I found seats opposite her. As they conferred in hushed tones, I studied the ancient texts, tracing the clan and covens. Intertwined lineage etched in illuminated manuscripts. Each page spoke of sacrifices made, of battles fought in secret, of the delicate equilibrium between light and shadow. At length, Celes spoke. Kelwin's network reaches into the heart of the city. He commands a cadre of oathbreakers mages, who sold their souls for power. They will attempt to seize the ring by force or subterfuge. We must act swiftly. Alex leaned forward, his voice steady. What can we do? How do we stop him? Celes met his gaze, respect flickering in her silver eyes. First, we fortify your defenses. There's a chamber beneath the castle unused. Since the days of Mary Stuart, whose wards we can reactivate. But it requires the ring's power linked with the blood of its bearer. You, Elowen, must stand at its center. My stomach nodded. Another ritual, another test. Yet this time, stakes were higher. The safety of Edinburgh, perhaps of the world, hung in the balance. I swallowed the rise of doubt and nodded. When? Tonight, Celes replied. During the twilight hour. The wards will hold only if the Pax energies are woven seamlessly. One misstep could break the seal forever. The day passed in a blur of preparation. Alex and I returned to our flat to collect provisions, blankets, water, and a small satchel of protective herbs, gifted by the sisters. As I packed, I glanced at the ring, now nestled in a velvet pouch. It felt heavy with expectation. We'll get through this, Alex said, wrapping his arms around me. Together. I closed my eyes, drawing strength from his certainty. Together. I echoed. That evening, as the sun dipped low, we set out for Edinburgh Castle. The streets were calm, but I sensed eyes watching from shadowed doorways. At the castle's base, the undercroft entrance loomed, a narrow archway concealed behind centuries of stone. The sisters ran their hands over the masonry, tracing lines, imperceptible to the untrained eye. Slowly, a section of wall slid aside, revealing a spiral staircase descending into darkness. We followed, torchlight flickering against damp walls. The air grew cool and musty, the scent of history thick around. U.S. At the bottom, a vast chamber opened, a cathedral of stone vaulted overhead. Silent except for dripping water. In the center stood a circular dais etched with glyphs. Sarcophagus-like blocks, carved with warding runes, surrounded it. Celes stepped forward, placing the ring in the dais's recess. Its glow flared in response, casting dancing lights across the walls. Form the circle, Celes instructed. She and the sisters spread out, each standing at one of the sarcophagi. Alex and I took places at two remaining glyphs. Celes began to chant, her voice weaving a tapestry of power that resonated in the stones. The ring's light pulsed in rhythm with her words. I closed my eyes, feeling the energy flow through me, ancient currents that connected me to the clan, to the coven, to every heart that had ever sworn the pact. The cavern trembled as the wards awoke. But then, a shudder ran through the dais. The ring's glow flickered. From the stairwell, a wail rose, a sound of rage and despair. Kelwin's oathbreakers had arrived. Torches appeared. borne by cloaked figures whose eyes gleamed with malicious intent. They raised their staves, shards of corrupted moonstone dripping with dark energy. Salus's chant faltered. The wards? Along the wall sparked and hissed. Alex looked to me, fear sharpening his gaze. Keep the light alive, he urged. I tightened my grip on the dais' edge, drawing on the ring's warmth. The glow steadied, radiating outward in a protective dome that lit the chamber like a second moon. Oathbreakers recoiled, their dark sigils sputtering. I realized then what I had to do. Stepping off the glyph, I cupped the ring in my palms and raised it high. Its light intensified, blinding, pure. The corrupted shards cracked and crumbled under its radiance. A voice boomed through the chamber. Ilawan Calder, bearer of the Calder Moonstone, you overstep your place. Kilwin's voice echoed from the stairwell. Ignoring him, I channeled every ounce of faith I had into the ring. The dais flared, and a pillar of light shot upward, sealing the archway behind the Oathbreakers. Their screams faded as the wards snapped into place. When the light dimmed, the chamber was silent. The Oathbreakers were gone, banished or entombed beyond the ward. Salis exhaled slowly. It is done for now. Alex joined me at the dais, his hand warm in mine. Are you okay? I nodded, though adrenaline still thrummed through me. I had drawn on power deeper than I knew existed, protected the city I loved, and proved that value transcended price. As we ascended the stairs into the night air, stars blinked overhead, witnesses to our trials, guardians of the pact. I pressed the ring to my heart, feeling its steady beat. Behind us, Edinburgh slept under its protective veil. Yet I knew Kelwyn would return, and others would follow. The pack's burden was mine to carry, and Alex's to share. I looked at him and whispered, whatever comes, we face it together. He smiled, the faint moonlight catching his eyes. Always. And somewhere, beyond the castle walls, a lone raven took flight, its cry a herald of storms yet to come, to be continued. Dawn's golden tendrils had barely warmed the cobblestones when Alex and I encountered the first signs of disruption. Crimson-stained offerings piled at the base of St. Giles Cathedral steps, ribbons of twilight energy flickering around the fine ancient door. The city was waking, oblivious to the hidden war erupting beneath faith and stone. I tightened the clasp on my jacket, the moonstone ring warm against my finger. The weight of what we'd accomplished and what remained sat heavy. In my chest, Mary King's close was secured. 4 Nexus sites still pulsed with vulnerable magic. Kelwyn's reach was long, and his vendetta against the pact relentless. The sisters had divided, leaving Salis at the castle, 3 sisters at Greyfriars and Holyrood, and a duo heading to St. Giles Crypt. But when they hadn't arrived by dawn, I knew Kelwyn's assault had begun in earnest. He sought to sow doubt among us, to force mistakes by isolating believers. Stay close, I murmured to Alex as we ascended the worn steps. The silhouette of the cathedral soared above us, its Gothic spire stretching like a sentinel into the pale sky. At the top, the doors hung ajar, an affront to centuries of sanctity. We entered, the echo of our footsteps swallowed by shadows under the high-arched ceiling. Sunlight filtered through stained glass, bathing the aisles in vibrant hues of red and gold, as if the very air pulsed with stories of martyrdom and miracle. Alex moved beside me, his hand brushing mine. We'll find them. We navigated the nave to a side door leading to the crypt, a vaulted labyrinth beneath the choir stalls. The corridor walls pulled tight, narrowing with each step. Faint symbols glowed on the stone where our sisters had reactivated the wards. Now most were dark, cracked like broken promises. I knelt at one, laying the ring's light against the fissure. The glyph flared back to life, its pattern shining silver. But as the ward mended, a whisper slithered through the silence, pained, urgent, pleading. I rose, breath catching. They're here, I said. Alex's jaw clenched. We pressed forward, torches raised against the chill that swept the corridor. At the crypt's heart, we found them, Sister Morwen and Sister Alira bound in spectral chains, their staves shattered, faces drawn with desperation. Across from them, Kael'wyn stood among a ring of corrupted moonstone shards, his eyes glinting with dark triumph. "Welcome," he greeted, voice smooth with menace. "Bearer of the Calder moonstone and her loyal anchor, you're too late." His words coiled around me like ice. I tightened my grip around my torch. "Unbind them," he laughed, a sound like shattering glass. "Or what? You'll unleash the Pack's power?" He flicked his hand, and shadows leapt from the shards to coalesce around the sisters, biting at their essence. Morwen cried out, pain echoing against stone. Alex stepped forward, torch tilted. "Let them go." Kael'wyn's grin warped. "Your anchor's strength is admirable, but you cannot save them without jeopardizing the ward itself." He raised a fist, drawing darkness into his palm. Time slowed, the ring throbbing at my finger. I felt every pulse, every heartbeat. The pact was a living covenant. I could draw on it, but too forceful a strike might shatter the fragile equilibrium. I stepped between Kael'wyn and the sisters, torch lowered but light shining bright. "I will not let you harm them." Kael'wyn advanced, shadows undulating around him. "Then you leave me no choice." The first blow struck like a blow to my ribs, dark energy clashing with the moonstone's glow. I stumbled but held firm, channeling the light toward the chains. Silver tendrils wrapped the spectral links, searing them with truth until they snapped apart. Morwen and Alira fell to the ground, free but gasping for breath. Kael'wyn snarled, flinging a wave of shadows at Alex. Alex raised his torch, stepping into the line of fire. The flames sprang to life, a barrier of warmth and gold. Kael'wyn recoiled, eyes narrowing. "Power without heart is hollow," I called out, focusing on the ring. The knotwork etched itself on my palm as silver light wove through the corridor, illuminating every rune, every crack. Kael'wyn's aura flickered. He hissed, "This ends now." He lunged, and our world erupted into chaos. I shouted, channeling the pack's full force into a beam of light that cleaved the shadows. The blast drove Kael'wyn back, rattling the crypt's columns, but his laughter rang out, defiant. He vanished in a swirl of darkness, leaving behind only the shards. The sisters rose shakily. Morwen touched my arm. "You saved us." Alira's eyes met mine. "But the shards remain. We must purge them." I glanced at the broken relics strewn across the floor, the twisted remnants of Moonstone. If they reformed, the Oathbreaker's power would surge anew. Alex knelt, gathering the shards. The flicker of torchlight danced across their fractured surfaces. "We need to cleanse them in moonlight." Morwen held out her hand, mana flickering between her fingertips. "We can contain them here, but I need you to hold the light." I nodded, lifting the ring in both hands. The light coalesced into a sphere, hovering above the dais. Alex placed the shards at its base, and the sisters began a chant, a melody of purification, carried on breath and bone. As they intoned, the light pulsed, drawing impurities from the shards. Each beat crushed darkness into dust, until only silence remained. The wards flared, sealing the crypt once more. The sisters embraced us, relief etched in their features. Outside, dawn had fully broken. The cathedral's bells tolled, calling the faithful to worship. Beneath their notes, I felt the pack's steady heartbeat, resilient, enduring. Alex slipped his arm around me as we emerged, the air crisp with morning promise. "One sight down," he said softly. I touched the ring, its glow faint but unwavering. 3 to go. As we left St. Giles' shadows behind, I knew the path ahead would test us further. But with every step, I remembered Saelis's words. Guided by the heart, we could overcome any darkness. And from the rooftop of the cathedral, a lone raven circled, its cry a vow of storms still to come. to be continued. The morning sunlight filtered through the stained glass windows of Greyfriars Kirkyard, painting the ancient tombstones in hues of ruby and amber. Alex and I stood before the iron gate, the ring warming against my palm like a heartbeat. The air was thick with mist and the scent of damp earth. Ravens croaked overhead, their eyes glinting with uncanny intelligence. "Greyfriars is next," I said, voice low. The sisters had warned that Kael'wyns could manipulate restless spirits, those unable to rest in peace, turning them into unwilling guardians of his dark designs. Alex nodded, tucking his scarf tighter around his neck. "We're ready." We slipped through the gate, stepping between leaning headstones carved with names centuries old. The cobbles beneath our feet were slick with dew. The vaults beneath the kirkyard were a network of catacombs that predated even the city above. Our guides, Sister Merida and Sister Anwen, led the way. Torches held aloft at the entrance to the catacombs. The sisters placed ward symbols glowing faintly in the torchlight. I knelt, pressing the ring's light against each rune. It pulsed and flared, reinforcing the ward's power. One by one, the glowing symbols solidified into silver protection. Sister Merida turned to me. Her eyes were haunted. "We've already lost one sister here. Kael'wyn's influence runs deep." I swallowed. Every step into the darkness felt like stepping onto a frozen lake, uncertain if the ice beneath would hold. We descended into the catacombs. The air grew colder, stink of decay thick. Bones and skulls were arranged in piles along the walls. Whispered voices drifted through the tunnels, faint, indecipherable. Anwen raised her staff. The moonstone shard at its tip glowed with a soft blue luminescence. "The first nexus point is here. Stand watchbearers." She and Merida knelt by a stone dais carved with twisted knotwork. We watched as they prepared a ritual, mixing powdered charcoal and crushed moonstone in a silver bowl. Suddenly, the air shifted, the whispering voices coalesced into a deafening chorus. From the darkness, ghostly figures emerged, spectral forms. Draped in tattered burial shrouds, their faces twisted in sorrow and rage, Merida and Anwen began chanting, their voices weaving through the tunnel. I stepped forward, raising the ring. A ribbon of silver light shot forth, forming a barrier between the sisters and the spirits. The ghosts shrieked, battering against the light, but unable to pass. Alex moved beside me, torch raised. "Remember, these spirits were once guardians of the pact. We must calm them, not destroy them." I let the ring's light shift from barrier to balm-soft, soothing. The silver glow washed over the phantoms, and their forms flickered. Some paused, heads tilting as though listening. Merida's chant shifted. "Spirits of Greyfriars, remember your oath. Remember the pact. Stand down." One spirit, a woman in a faded burial gown, drifted forward. Her eyes were empty sockets, yet full of longing. She reached toward the ring. I knelt, extending my hand. "I carry the Calder moonstone, bound by the ancient covenant. We seek not to harm, but to protect." The spirit's form glimmered. She touched the ring's light, and her ghostly visage softened. The other spirits halted their assault, slowly retreating into the walls. Anwen rose, relief flooding her face. "You've done it. They've accepted the pact once more." She nodded to Merida, who placed the charcoal and moonstone mixture onto the dais. Silver light flared, sealing the nexus. But the moment their task was done, a low rumble shook the catacombs. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the glowing wards flickered. A distorted voice echoed from the depths. "Fools! You cannot bind me." The tunnel lights swayed. Darkness pooled at the far end. Shadows twisted into humanoid shapes, oathbreakers, their forms half shadow, eyes burning. Merida and Anwen drew their staffs but faltered under the oncoming darkness. Alex gripped my arm. "Ren, we have to hold them." I nodded, raising the ring. The knotwork glowed white-hot. Light burst forth in a pillar, blasting through the Oathbreakers. They howled, clutching at the brightness, but one lunged straight for me, its shadowed claws nearly grazing my arm. I recoiled, heart pounding. The light pillar wavered. Alex stepped forward, torch blazing. He hurled the flame at the creature, igniting it with spectral fire. The shadow shrieked and dissolved, but at a cost. The flame sputtered, and his torch went dark dot in the ensuing lull. I realized the Nexus ward was weakening. The ring's glow dimmed with every breath. "Alex!" I cried, panic rising. He turned, his face grim. "We have to push through the ritual." "I'll hold them back." Merida held up her staff. "Continue the chant. Bind the ward." I knelt at the dais, chanting with the sisters. Each word a piece of the ancient oath, weaving thread by thread the tapestry of protection. The ring's light surged, feeding the ward's dot above the dais. The knotwork shimmered. For a moment, it seemed the ward would seal with a resonant hum. But then, a thunderous crack. The tunnel roof buckled, debris raining down. I screamed as a boulder hurtled toward the dais dot in that instant. The ring's light flared in my palm, a defiant pulse of pure silver. But then everything went black. "To be continued." When the boulder struck, I felt a searing pain crack through my head, and the world dissolved into a void of sound and light. Dust and debris rained around me, and the last thing I saw before darkness claimed me was Alex's outstretched hand. His face contorted with fear. I awoke to the taste of grit on my tongue and the acrid sting of smoke in my lungs. My vision swam blurred torches, drifting motes of dust. The anguished silhouettes of the sisters scrambling to clear the rubble. Panic clawed at me as adrenaline surged. I blinked and realized I was pinned beneath a fallen beam, one arm trapped, the other clutching the ring. "Ren!" Alex's voice broke through the haze, urgent and raw. He knelt beside me, his torchlight illuminating blood on my forehead. "Hold on," he whispered, his hand pressing against my chest as if to steady me. "We've almost got you." The sisters called out, their voices echoing in the cracked vault. Anwen and Merida worked together, heaving the beam with strained grunts. Celes pressed her hands into the rubble, murmuring an incantation that made the stones tremble. A sharp pain shot through my arm, and I gasped. Through blurred vision, I saw Kaelwyn's shadow an impossibility, I thought, but there he was, lingering at the far end of the collapsed corridor. His form shimmered, darkness wreathed around him like smoke. "He's come to finish the pact." I thought, horror lancing my heart. But the sisters summoned a wave of silvery light that pushed the shadow back, giving them the precious seconds needed to free me. With a final heave, the beam shifted and I fell backward onto cold stone. Alex caught me, cradling me in his arms as Celes knelt to examine my wrist. "The beam bruised your arm, but it's only a fracture," she said, her voice calm despite the danger still looming. "Can you move?" Alex asked, voice gentle. I forced a nod even as pain flared. The ring in my hand pulsed faintly, a heartbeat of light reminding me of responsibilities beyond my injury. "We must complete the ward," Celes reminded. She took my free hand and used the ring itself as a focal point, sending a pulse of healing energy through my body. I felt warmth flood me, easing the pain just enough that I could stand. "Thank you," I whispered, though I knew the debt I owed her would last a lifetime. Merida and Anwen returned, securing the fractured glyphs with moonstone paste. The dais glowed once more, the ward shimmering back to life. The cavern hummed with power, its resonance like a soothing lullaby after the chaos dot at the entrance. Kaelwyn's faint silhouette flickered one final time before dissolving like smoke. His mocking laugh echoed, distant and defeated. "He's gone," Merida said, breathing heavily. "For now." Celes corrected. "He may return through another breach, but Greyfriars is secure." Alex helped me to a sitting position on the dais. "How do you feel?" I tested my arm gingerly. Bruised, shattered, but still here. I gripped his hand. We did it. He leaned in, forehead resting against mine. We did. And we will keep doing it. Together. The crypt settled into a reverent silence, the wards humming with quiet. Triumph. As we climbed the staircase back into the misty dawn, I pressed the ring to my heart, feeling its steady warmth. Only one nexus remained, Holyrood Abbey. The sisters would guard the castle and Greyfriars. Alex and I had to face the abbey and its crown of ancient ruins alone. Sunlight broke over the city as we stepped into the courtyard, the abbey's crumbling arches silhouetted against the sky. My body trembled, but my resolve burned brighter than pain or fear. I straightened, turning to Alex. One more. He nodded, slipping an arm around my shoulders. Let's finish this. And as the mist rolled away, revealing the abbey's silent stones, I knew our final test was at hand. Battle not just for Edinburgh, but for every promise sealed within the Moonstone. To be continued. We stood before the crumbling arches of Holyrood Abbey as the sun climbed toward noon, its light spilling across the tumbled stones and ancient cloisters. The final nexus site lay within, the ruined chapel where long-forgotten kings were crowned and buried beneath the earth. If Caelwyn could seize that point, the pact would shatter, and his shadow would claim Edinburgh and perhaps far beyond. Alex tightened his grip on my hand. Ready? I nodded, feeling every scar, every bruise of the past trials throb with purpose. Ready. The sisters had dispersed. Sally's to guard the castle's warded Undercroft. Merida and Anwen bid to Holyrood's perimeter to intercept any oathbreakers, leaving Alex and me to breach the chapel itself. We slipped through a narrow gap in the abbey's outer wall, where ivy choked the stone and time had carved flickers of forgotten glory into the moss. Ravens cawed overhead, as if sounding a warning. The interior was a cathedral of ruin. Columns, cracked by centuries, stained glass gone to dust, stone benches overturned and half buried. Yet at its center, I saw the day as a ring of concentric glyphs carved deep into the floor, still faintly glowing with residual magic. I knelt at its edge, brushing away leaves and rubble. The ring in my pocket warmed, urging me onward. I drew it out, and its knotwork pulsed in response to the chapel's latent power. Behind me, Alex whispered, "It's quiet." "Too quiet," I murmured. I tapped the ring on the glyph. Light spread outward in a circle, touching every rune. The dais flared to life, and a column of silver light shot toward the sky, only to sputter and die midway, as though suffocated. A soft chuckle drifted through the ruin. We spun. Caelwyn stepped from the shadows, clad in dark robes that seemed to swallow the light. His eyes glowed with feral triumph. Behind him, oathbreakers emerged, shadows coalescing into 6 lethal shapes. "This is where it ends, Allowin Calder," he said, voice echoing. "Here, I claim the last nexus." I rose, ring uplifted. "Not while I draw breath." He smiled, a cruel twist of lips, then breathed deeply. With a gesture, he unleashed a wave of darkness that raced across the chapel floor. The glyphs flickered and cracked. I dashed forward, pressing my palm to the stone, channeling every ounce of the Moonstone's power. The rune glowed, resisting the corruption. Alex stood at my side, torch blazing, keeping the oathbreakers at bay. The battle erupted. Corrupted shards whipped through the air, shattering pillars and sending rubble crashing down. Alex and I fought back to back, he with righteous fire, I with unyielding light. Each clash of forces sent shockwaves through the ruin. Ancient tomb slabs skidded across the floor, upending and fracturing under the strain. Caelwyn's voice rang clear. "You cannot stop the tide of darkness." I steeled myself and met his gaze. "I already have." With a cry, I summoned every fragment of the pack's energy. The ring's glow intensified until it outshone the sun, a beacon of pure silver that cleansed the chapel. Oathbreakers screamed as corruption burned away, their forms dissolving into nothingness. Alex's torch flared, amplifying the light. With every sinew of his will, Kaelwyn stumbled back, darkness peeling from him like ill-stitched cloth. He staggered to the dais and lunged for the ring nestled in my palm. I hopped off the glyph, torch lifted high. No! He lunged again, and our hands clashed, ring against twisted cloak. Light and shadow snapped, crackled, and leapt in every direction. The chapel shook. Bones rattled. I felt the ring's pulse sync with my heartbeat. Opportunity shone. With a final surge, I pulled the ring free and placed it onto the dais, directly at its center. The glyphs flared at once bright, whole, alive. A wave of energy radiated outward, sealing every crack and warding the nexus. Kaelwyn wailed, shielded by the silver glow. He shrank back, melting into a shadow vortex that spiraled up through the broken roof and into the sky. Silence reclaimed. The ruin, a heavy sacred pause. Alex rushed to me, his face wet with sweat and tears. "You did it." I sank to my knees, gasping with relief. The ring lay upon the dais, glowing softly. The chapel's arches, though shattered, felt charged with new life. Merida and Anwin appeared at the entrance, their relief palpable. Celes followed, face alight with pride. She knelt beside me. "Elawyn Calder," she intoned, voice ringing. "Bearer of the final oath crystal, you have renewed the pact and thwarted the Oathbreaker's darkest ambition. Edinburgh is safe for now." I looked to Alex, whose smile was both weary and radiant. "Together?" I asked, voice trembling. He took my hand. "Always." We rose, and the sisters formed a circle around the dais. Silver light pulsed from the ring, weaving with the chapel's ancient magic until the glyphs glowed like stars. Then, as if on command, the dais's light faded into dusk's warm glow. The chapel, though in ruins, felt whole. A hush settled, profound and infinite. I slid the ring back onto my finger. Its knotwork felt different, now etched not just in metal, but in my soul. Alex wrapped his arm around me. "The pact endures," he said softly. I nodded, tears blurring my vision as I looked around at the ruined chapel, now a beacon of hope. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications. And above us, the sun pierced the broken rooflight, at last triumphant over shadow. The end. The aftermath was both triumphant and surreal. Standing within the hushed ruins of Holyrood Abbey, I could still feel the echo of power that had surged through the dais moments before the living heartbeat of the pact, renewed and unbroken. Alex held me close, his warmth a tether to the world I'd saved. Yet even as dawn's gentle rays bathed the chapel in golden light, I knew our journey was not just an ending but a beginning. We had defended Edinburgh's ancient wards, cleansed every nexus site, and thwarted Kaelwyn's vendetta, but the pact was alive, and with life came responsibility. Sael and the sisters formed a circle around us. Their faces reflected relief, awe, and determination. Celes, her silver hair glowing in the early light, stepped forward. Elawyn Calder, bearer of the Calder Moonstone, and Alex Sinclair, anchor of the pact. "Your deeds have restored the covenant and defended the balance between light and shadow," she announced, voice ringing like a bell. "From this day forward, you are recognized as guardians of Ashenvale, protectors of the ancient lineage. May your bond guide and your courage never falter." A hush fell, and then murmurs of congratulations and blessings whispered through the circle. I felt tears sting my eyes as I looked at Alex, my partner, my anchor, the one who had stood by me through every trial. He squeezed my hand. "We did it," he whispered. "I couldn't have done it without you," I replied, voice thick with emotion. The sisters began to step back, fading into the corridors of the Abbey to spread word of our victory and reinforce wards wherever the city still needed protection. Celes lingered a moment, placing a gentle hand on my arm. "Remember," she said softly, "the Pact's power will guide you in times of doubt. trust in each other. With a final nod, she turned and vanished into the arcane shadows. Alex and I stood alone in the silent chapel, the weight of our new roles settling around us. Outside, the city-stirred church bells pealed. Distant voices rose in song and prayer, and Edinburgh awoke to a new dawn. I removed the ring and held it to the light. Its moonstone glimmered with a quiet certainty, as if it knew the story was far from over. Besides, I realized, every ending is just a new beginning. We walked out of the Abbey hand in hand, stepping into a world that would never quite be the same. The cobblestones felt warmer under our feet. The air tasted of promise. Where to now? Alex asked, squeezing my hand. I smiled, thoughts already stretching into the horizon. First, I said, we go home, then we tell our story. Not just this one, but every story waiting to be born. He raised an eyebrow, curiosity bright in his eyes. And then? I slipped the ring back onto my finger. Then, we continue guarding the pact and forging our own legacy. He laughed, a sound of pure joy. I can't wait. As we walked down the Abbey steps, the sun climbed higher, chasing away the last shadows of night. The city lay before us, its spires and rooftops shining. Every alley, every cobblestone held secrets and stories waiting to be discovered. And in that moment, I knew our adventure had only just begun.